Somebody once told me the world was gonna roll me. I ate the sharpest. Oh, it's an ASMR video. Damn it. Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy, and welcome to an ASMR reading of Five Nights at Freddy's Fazbear Frights 1:35 a.m. Today we are reading page 61 to 80. Now you guys might be curious why I'm doing an ASMR video, and the real answer is I can't drink out of my drink I made this morning of lemonade and Arizona tea without hitting the sides with ice while I stir it. So we are gonna deal with that as a group and turn this episode into an ASMR listening experience. Oh, I bet the the microphone's gonna love that audio. I know a lot of you hate ASMR, so I'm gonna really, really quietly tell you who asked. Fuck out of here. Politely, of course. Now, let's stop all this dilly-dallying. And we shall read 1:35 a.m. written by Ellie Cooper, Andrea Ragnar, with the game being inspired by the Five Nights at Freddy's series, the one Scott Cawthon made. I need to put... I'm autistic. I need you to put me on nights, Delilah said to Nate. Nate stopped in mid-throw. He turned and raised both eyebrows. You messing with me? Delilah shook her head. I'm having trouble sleeping at night. It's a thing. I figure if I work nights, I can keep sleeping during the day. I know Grace hates managing the night shift. She'd be happy to trade with me, I'm sure. You're a better manager. I like having you here when it's busy. Thanks. Where's my beanie? Hold on, let me try to find my beanie. My freaking hair keeps getting in the way. Just cut this. As we try to, as quietly as possible, try to find my beanie. I had to move my water bottle off of my thing. So I'm sorry for that. Sorry for the small intrusion. Let us continue reading. If any of you know what character I'm trying to sound like right now, then I will implore you to figure that out. I'll give you a hint. They're from an anime called Hunter x Hunter. And they're actually kind of cool in my opinion. Okay, let us continue. First, we need a sip out of our drinky. I just spilled lemonade all over my fucking computer. Not my computer. First of all, my bookmark, which is apparently freaking waterproof, which I didn't. And secondly, the keyboard that I just slapped that turned off my recording. Okay. Now, let us continue reading while I question the sanity of if my computer will survive any more attacks I try to do. By the way, my keyboard sounds really nice, doesn't it? We're just trying to get rid of all that lemonade. Damn it. You can really hear the sound of my typing as I do that. And what I'm doing is naming the second part of this ASMR because I accidentally hit space. And I'm being kind of an idiot, to be honest. Okay, now back to the reading. Thanks. That wasn't a compliment. It was a statement of fact and a complaint. You're just a teddy bear under all that bluster, Delilah said. That was true. Nate complained about every employee and every customer in the diner in general, and he loved them all. You tell anyone, I'll have to kill you. Delilah zipped her mouth shut. Nate sighed. Okay, switch. But do what you can do to work out the thing. Thanks. Be here at 10. And do not be late. I'm going to buy 2 alarm clocks right now. Good girl. Delilah didn't know why she didn't think of it before. How could Ella plague Delilah at 1:35 a.m. if Delilah was already awake at the time? There's no way Ella could sneak up on Delilah at the restaurant, so all Delilah had to do was work nights until Ella ran out of juice or whatever. Problem solved. Even though Delilah had never liked the night shift when she'd worked it before, she was so buoyed by her plan to be free of Ella when she went to work in the best mood she'd been in a long time. She was so upbeat when she clocked in at 9:55 p.m. that Glenn, the night shift cook, asked her if she was all right. Freedom, Glenn, she said. This is what freedom feels like. Weird is what you look like. But he grinned to let her know he didn't hold it against her. Glenn was a huge guy with a gut that sometimes caught fire when he hung it over a grill. In spite of his size, he was energetic. She thought he was pretty young, maybe in his late 20s. He had a baby face, chin-length sideburns, and kind brown eyes. She liked working with him. For 3 hours and 39 minutes, Delilah felt great. She chatted with all the late-night regulars, letting a couple of old guys flirt with her. She didn't even mind the couples, the ones who came in late and after late shows, the ones who used to make her feel desperately alone. At 1:34 a.m., Delilah stepped into the walk-in refrigerator and grabbed some cheese and some lettuce. For some reason, salads were popular tonight. Right as she was bending to reach for the cheddar when she heard an alarm going off in the kitchen. Rising up, she whacked her head on the shelf above her, but she ignored the pain and looked at her watch. It was 1:35 a.m. Turning out of the walk-in, Delilah spun in a circle in the kitchen. Where's that coming from? She shouted. Glenn looked up from the grill. Jackie, the night server, dropped the plate and stared at Delilah with wide blue eyes. Where's what coming from? Glenn asked. That. The alarm was similar to the torture device that Gerald had used. It had the same ringing, buzzing, shrieking undulation. Delilah ran into the deep fryer and looked at its controls. No, it wasn't going off. She checked the ovens. They weren't even being used. She tore into the employee break room. No, the sound wasn't coming from in there. It was out in the kitchen. Delilah returned to the middle of the stainless steel maze and began searching through pots, pans, and utensils. She didn't do it neatly or methodically, and when she tossed her third pan, Glenn grabbed her arm. Hey, Lady Delilah, you tripping? What? Delilah rested from Glenn's grass. No, don't you hear the sound? Stop. Delilah tilted her head and listened, but all she could hear was now normal diner noises. She looked at Glenn and at Jackie, who was staring like Delilah had turned into an elephant. You two didn't hear that? She asked. You heard you shouting and throwing pans around, Gladys said. Delilah looked at Jackie, a year or two younger than Delilah, and still unsure of herself. Jackie wore bright blue glasses, lenses that made her eyes look huge in shock. Jackie shook her head. I didn't hear anything. I mean, other than, you and the usual, stuff. This couldn't be happening. How could Ella have followed Delilah over here? Well, why couldn't she follow Delilah over here? Hadn't Ella already demonstrated that pretty much whatever she wanted? Which is crazy. Which is technology gone airy, right? You gonna be okay? Glenn asked. Delilah shook her head. Yeah. And she figured that she would be. At least she didn't have to try to go to sleep with her heart pounding so loudly she was sure Glenn and Jackie could hear it and were being too polite to say so. So her plan hadn't worked, and the upside was either adrenaline-driven energy surge for work instead of trying to fight it when she would go to sleep. Maybe tomorrow night because she was prepared for the alarm sound now, she could ignore it and got on with her shift. Maybe her new plan would work after all. On the second night shift, Delilah made sure she wasn't alone at 1:35 a.m. She stuck close to Glenn when she didn't seem to mind, but in spite of being with him, she still lost it. He couldn't help it. Tonight, for the first time, she hadn't heard or sensed anything. She'd seen something. She'd seen a flash of bright blue in the walk-in when Jackie opened the door. When she saw what she was sure was Ella coming out of the walk-in, Delilah screamed and pressed against Glenn. He didn't seem to mind that either, but when he did ask why she was screaming, she had no answer for him. At 1:30 a.m., the third night of Delilah's switch to night shift, Delilah was behind the counter. She decided the way to make sure nothing spooked her tonight was to stay out here in the open, well away from the walk-in. When Mrs. Jeffrey, the rice pudding regular, came into the diner, Delilah was thrilled. She would serve Miss Jeffrey, and 1:35 a.m. would just go on by. Hi, Delilah. Miss Jeffrey took a seat on one of the swiveling paddled counter stools. Her eyes were puffy. Delilah leaned in the counter. Hi, Miss Jeffrey. Having trouble sleeping? Just Jeffrey patted her tousled hair. I suppose it's obvious. I do hope you still have some rice pudding left. Absolutely. I'll just stop. She looked over her shoulder when glanced at the clock. It was 1:33 a.m. Where was Jackie? No way did Delilah want to go back to the walk-in. She was sure Ella would be in there waiting for her. Jackie? She called. No answer. Jackie came out as a bellow. Glenn stuck his head out of the kitchen. Is there a problem? Delilah tried to calm her breathing. She was building up a full-blown anxiety attack, and she didn't want to have one of those in front of her customer and co-workers. Delilah looked at Mrs. Jeffrey, and the elderly woman's brown eyes were wide. Sorry, Delilah said. It's just... Stopping the counter stool next to Mrs. Jeffrey, he started spinning back and forth. She blinked and then realized Ella was on the stool. Ella was playing on the stool. Stop it, Delilah clambered over the counter and grabbed the stool. That's when Jackie entered the dining room. Delilah glanced at Jackie and she realized she was sprawled over the counter, her butt up in the air. No wonder Jackie was gawking at her up in mouth. You all right, dear? Mrs. Jeffrey asked. Delilah slid off the counter. Didn't you see the doll on the stool? Doll? That's my purse, dear. Miss Jeffrey patted a bright blue purse that sat on the stool next to her. Delilah backed on the counter. She checked the clock, and of course it was 1:35 a.m. The next night, something similar happened. Delilah stayed in the dining room. She was still traumatized at 1:35 a.m. when she saw something moving around in the trash bin under the counter. Wanting to believe it was a mouse, even though that would have been horrible for the diner, she used the fork to search the rubbish, and she didn't find a mouse. But she spotted a pink ruffle that made her drop the fork and jump back. She resisted the urge to scream but she hadn't been able to resist the urge to hurl the trash bin out of the back door of the diner, scattering trash. But no Ella, who as usual was instantly moved on, all over the pavement. Delilah just couldn't contain her reactions. She knew Glenn and Jackie were watching her, but that wasn't enough to keep her calm. It was the fifth night of the night shift that Delilah in. Even though it hadn't worked so well yet, Delilah still thought it was the safest place for her in the diner. It was the main dining room. She did her best to avoid closing spaces like the walk in the supply room and Nate's office. At 1:30 a.m. on the fifth night, the diner was empty of customers. Delilah and Jackie were filling a small glass salt and pepper containers. Delilah had salt, Jackie had pepper. They had the tray of containers set up at the table by the diner's front window, and they had sat on the opposite sides of the table. While they worked, Jackie chattered about college classes. Delilah tried to pay attention. She was mentally counting down the minutes and seconds to 1:35 a.m. Was it going to be tonight? Every muscle joined Delilah's body was stiff with dread. But when Delilah spotted something bright blue flutter through the parking lot in the front diner, muscles and joints released and went into action. She jumped up, knocking tray of salt and paper shakers onto the floor. With a loud crash, she spun out of the diner front door. Rushing through the nearly empty parking lot, she scanned for Ella's dress. She showed that's what she'd seen. She'd seen the trailing edge of Ella's fluffy dress. The doll was out here. She'd been watching Delilah. That's when she didn't see Ella. Delilah started looking under the two parked cars at the end of the lot. She was bending to check under the first one when someone grabbed her shoulder. She screamed, "Okay, you're okay." It was Glenn. His face looked pale in mottled light. "Did you see her?" Delilah asked. "See who?" She looked in Glenn's eyes were so sympathetic and concerned. Delilah crumpled into Glenn's arms and started to cry. Delilah thought it was pretty amazing that she'd gotten through 23 nights of 1:35 a.m. horror without crying. In fact, she even noticed that she didn't cry. But once she started crying, she couldn't stop. She cried so much after Glenn got her inside, she called Nate and asked him to come in. Nate arrived as Jackie was sweeping up broken glass from the diner floor while Delilah sat in the back room trying to get her body up and stop twitching. Nate talked to Glenn and Jackie. She couldn't hear what they said, but figured they would say something on her own behalf. She stood. "Come with me," Nate said. "Good." She was taking her to his office and she could claim things there. Or not. As soon as they entered his office, Nate closed the door behind him. "I'm sorry, Delilah. I have to let you go." Delilah looked at Nate with wide eyes and felt bruised and lacerated. "Don't look at me like that." Nate went around the office and dropped into the leather chair. Delilah twisted her mouth and tried not to whisper. "I've cut you all kinds of slack for being late. I've worked around your thing and it's too much. Jackie says you've been acting super weird." She gave the words air quotes. "The last 4 nights and now this. I can't keep an employee who freaks out customers be trays full of salt and pepper shakers." "Nate, I don't even try to give me a sob story. I'm not your father. Whatever you're going on that made you do what you did tonight is something we need to work on your own, outside this diner. You're a good worker and you're here in focus, and I can't afford the liability risk of you acting like this." He rubbed his beard. I'll have someone bring you your last check tomorrow." Delilah stood in front of Nate's scared old desk and looked at his neat little paws. She turned. She wasn't going to beg for the job. As she left for the diner, she wasn't even thinking about the job. She was thinking about Ella. Every night it was getting worse. How was she going to get through another 1:35 a.m.? When Richard had asked Delilah to move out of his parents' great house, she had no place to go. She'd gone to Harper. Harper welcomed her with open arms, but unfortunately Harper lived in a house with 10 other struggling actors. All Harper had to offer was half of a double-sized bed mattress on the floor that was once a massive walk-in closet. Massive for a closet, but not a great place to sleep. Harper loved her retreat. She got the bed, and she got to organize all her clothes on the racks and shelves in the closet. Delilah hated the tiny space. It gave her claustrophobia. Plus, Harper snored and talked in her sleep. Delilah had not only stayed with Harper 3 days before getting her apartment with the money Richard had given her, so it said a lot with her state of mind that she called Harper when she got home from work and asked if she could stay with Harper for a few nights. "Sure thing," Harper said. "We'll have a slumber party. You don't even know 1:35 has come and gone." Delilah wanted to believe that was true. She tried to believe it. Harper was performing that evening. She did 6 evenings a week, so she still left Delilah in the care of one of her housemates, a funky guy named Rudolph. Who spent the afternoon and evening teaching Delilah a card game he created. She never did fully understand it, but he had to admit it was entertaining. Rudolph was funny and nice too. By the time Harper got home about 12:30 a.m., Delilah was surprisingly relaxed. "Okay," Harper said, dragging Delilah away from the disappointed Rudolph. "You don't get to keep her as a pet, Rudy," she chastised. He stuck out his lower lip and then grinned at Delilah as Delilah followed Harper on the second floor of the house. "I have munchies," Harper said. "The salty kind, guaranteed to keep away snarky high-tech dolls." Delilah's stomach did somewhat somersault at the word doll. Harper led Delilah into her bedroom, threw several bags and boxes of chips and crackers in the mattress, and then said, "I need to go wash off the face paint. Be right back." Delilah sat on the mattress, opened a box of cheese crackers and nibbled on one. Her stomach continued to do gymnastics. When Harper returned, she entered Delilah with towards the evening's performance. So first Manny forgot his line, and then he said, "My line," Harper said as he ordered a bag of barbecue potato chips. "Imbecile, I had to think fast, so I kissed him." What was that in character? My character's a bit of a doodle bug, so pretty much anything is in character. Delilah looked at her watch. It was 12:55 a.m. "Hey, did you just look at your watch?" Harper grabbed Delilah's arm. "Give me that." Delilah didn't resist when Harper took out Delilah's watch and stuffed it under her pillow. She didn't need anyway. She knew when 1:35 came. "No watch, no 1:35 a.m. Harper wiped her hands in that gesture. Delilah wanted it to be that easy, but it wasn't. She knew exactly when 1:35 a.m. rolled around. She knew because suddenly a voice said, "It's time." Delilah jumped up and hit her head on the rack above her head. "What are you doing?" Harper asked her at the same time. Delilah ducked her head under the rack and said, "Did you do that?" When they both spoke at the same time again. "What do you mean?" Delilah said. "Do what?" Harper said. They both stopped. Delilah could still hear Gerald's voice in the ear repeating, "It's time," in a receding echo. Delilah looked down at Harper. "Did you hear that?" Harper frowned up at Delilah. "I didn't hear anything except Raw's oldies music and the movie Kay and Julia are watching downstairs." "You didn't just mimic Gerald?" "I'm sitting right in front of you. I'm eating potato chips. How could I have mimicked Gerald?" Harper popped a chip in her mouth with deliberate emphasis. She chewed loudly. Delilah shook her head, and she realized she was shivering when she had to clench her teeth together to keep them from chattering. "Then you must have Ella." "What?" Delilah's neck was starting to hurt when she caught her position under the closet rack, and her legs felt weak. She sank in the bed. "You know what Gerald sounds like?" So, would you program Ella to sound like him? Record yourself mimicking him or something?" Harper shoved aside a bag of chips and leaned toward Delilah. "I want to be sure I'm understanding what you're saying," narrowed her eyes. "You're saying I took your wacky doll and somehow got her to work, and I recorded my impression of Gerald on the doll and play it for you? Is that what you're saying?" Delilah shook her head. "No," Harper asked. "Then what are you saying?" "That is what I'm saying. You're just crazy is what you're just. I don't have the stupid doll. I never saw the stupid doll, and I had seen the doll. I had taken the doll. I sure would have recorded something that on it to scare you. Why would I do that?" "I don't know." Delilah looked at her head. She felt a little stupid. Why would Harper do that? She remembered the voice she heard, and who else could have done it? "You tell me," Delilah said. "Why did you do it?" "I didn't do it," Harper shouted. Delilah flinched when she whispered, "But there's no other explanation." Harper stared at Delilah. "Geez, Dell, you're losing it, girl." She shoved the junk food off the bed and curled up with the side of her back to Delilah. "I'm going to sleep." "I wish I could." "You could," Harper said. "Just get out of your head. It's not me, it's Ella." Harper sighed and started breathing deeply and evenly. "Must be nice," Delilah muttered. The next day, Delilah spent the day hanging out with Harper and her housemates because she couldn't fall asleep until almost 7 a.m. Harper woke her up when she got about 10 a.m. Delilah was fuzzy and sleep deprived, and she felt like someone had stuffed her brain with cotton candy. When she got up, Harper assumed either to forget gotten Delilah's accusations or forgiven them. She didn't say anything about what happened between them, and she was her usual vicious self all day. Delilah decided not to say anything else about Ella, who also decided, though, that she wasn't staying here tonight, and she'd leave while Harper was at the theater. She didn't know until she walked to her car at 4:35 p.m. where she was going to go. It came to her in a flash of brilliant insight. She would go to a motel on the other side of town. Ella wouldn't be able to find her there. Delilah didn't think of anyone else, like Harper, would find her there either. She wasn't going to use name or anything, but Harper wouldn't process things in the sort of organized way that she'd think to do in a search of motels and find out her friend was staying there. So at 6:15 p.m., after Lila ate a burger and fries at the fast food place, she checked out of the Bed for You motel on the outskirts of the scruffier side of town. The quality level of the hotel was evident in both the name and the fact that the fading sign announced a bed and a TV in every room. "Talk about luxury," Delilah said as she parked her car over weeds growing through cracks of the time-worn asphalt. The price was right, though. Trying not to breathe in smells of bleach and stowed cabbage in the hotel's small brown lobby, Delilah paid for 3 nights. She was happy that the total barely made a dent in the credit limit on her one credit card. She was also happy that she got the room at the far end of the long, low building in the back. Away from traffic, the heavy woman behind the desk wasn't interested in Delilah at all. She was too busy watching the documentary about spiders and an old TV mounted on the wall next to a check-in counter. The whole hotel room was surprisingly neat and clean, done in the same ugly brown tones Delilah had found in the lobby. The room wouldn't win any beauty prizes, but it smelled fresh and everything worked. The bed was even comfortable, because the only other surfaces in the room suitable for sitting were a couple of straight-backed, cloth-covered chairs. Delilah plopped on the bed as soon as she bolted the door and set her stuff in a low barrel across from the bed. She was pleased to discover the motel was pretty well insulated. The traffic was on the busy road in front of the motel. It was a distant shh, and Delilah couldn't hear anything else. She thought she might watch some TV when she got back in the room, but she tired and risked lying back on the pillow, tense, expecting the usual panic attack symptoms. She failed when she felt nothing but exhaustion. She closed her eyes, and sleep took her from the motel room into a promise more potent of her dreams. The sound crept through to sleep like a spider crawling through her synapses, leaving silken trails along her neural pathways, and scuffing sound like something scooting over a rough surface. Her mind couldn't make enough sense of it or integrate it into her dream about riding horses, so the horse in her dream threw her off, and she came face to face with the spider. She screamed, and the scream slung her back into consciousness. Delilah's eyes opened, and she realized she was still screaming. She pressed her lips together and bit her tongue. She wanted to get up and run, but she couldn't. She was paralyzed. Wait, was she awake? That she thought she was. However, it was something crawling on the roof. It made a similar sound to one in her dream, but this sound was worse. It wasn't the sound of some spider going out about his business. It was a strategic sound. It startled, it stopped, it moved here, moved there. It was searching sound, a seeking sound, and a sound of something with an objective. And Delilah knew she was the objective. Ella had found Delilah and looking for a way into the motel room. Whining like a kitten and being hunted by a coyote, Delilah struggled to free her limbs from whatever force held her immobile. But she was still pinned to the bed. The only thing she could do was move her head, and she turned her head and looked at the digital clock on the bedside table. It read, of course, 1:35 a.m. As soon as Delilah saw the time, she discovered she could move. She thrashed free of the bedspread, and she managed to wrap her around herself in her sleep. She jumped from the bed and crouched against the wall of the door. Her gaze riveted on the ceiling. Flashing dark red light and neon sign next door to the motel splayed across the ceiling like a blood spatter. It was sporadically illuminated by the flickering fluorescent lamp that lit up the motel walkways of the parking lot. This meant Delilah could see what she needed to see. Nothing was coming through the ceiling, but that didn't comfort her. Ella had other ways of getting into the room, and even if she did get into the room, the very fact that she was outside the room on the roof meant that Delilah's brief respite was over. There was no getting away from Ella. Delilah began rocking back and forth like a child, and she hummed until daylight broke. She didn't know what she was humming at first, and then she recognized the tune. It was humming an old lullaby her mom used to sing to her when she was little. Even though Delilah had paid for 3 nights, she left the motel room at noon the next day. There was no point in staying. She couldn't sleep, and there wasn't safe there. She was pretty sure she wasn't safe anywhere, but Delilah figured about being immobile wasn't a bad idea. This assumed, though, that Ella's circuits hadn't noted the make, model, color, and maybe even the license plate of Delilah's car. Ella had. After all, ridden to the apartment in the car, she probably could have left some sort of tracker on it. Delilah's drive was no doubt a pointless waste of time and gasoline. What else could Delilah do? So she drove. She drove all afternoon and all evening. She drove all over the city, exploring the neighborhoods she hadn't known existed. She gazed longingly at the big family homes and children playing in the park. She cruised the shopping district, remembering what it was like to be able to buy whatever she wanted, and also remember how little pleasure it had given her. She never wanted things, she wanted love. When the sun started going down a little after 6, Delilah realized she was being stupid, very stupid. Why was she staying in the city? Why don't get out of town? Drive out of the country. Wouldn't it be harder for Ella to reach her there? Delilah turned to the busy corner and pointed her car toward the freeway. Then she immediately turned again, looping back to the neighborhood she just left. Maybe she wasn't being stupid after all. What if the city was helping her, keeping her safe? What if Ella would be free to do whatever she wanted to Delilah if they were away in a populated area? Besides, in her country, it was dark. Very dark. And in the country, it was dark, very dark. Delilah had only one small flashlight. She didn't think she could stand facing 1:35 a.m. in the pitch dark. No, she'd stay in town. But where? Going into a drive-thru in the fast food burrito place, Delilah bought a chicken and rice burrito with sour cream. Weirdly, even though she was so scared, she was probably just one more shock from full-blown hysteria. But she still had her appetite. Maybe her body knew she needed nutrition to handle what was coming her way. Delilah ate a burrito at the drive-in movie theater she discovered on the west of the edge of the city. She had no idea what was there. She was happy to find it, though it kept her awake until nearly midnight. That's when the last movie, a chase scene heavy action flick, ended, and Delilah had to join the ragged line of cars struggling out of the drive-in. That's when she decided where she would be when 135 came around. She thought about parking her car behind a dark building in a quiet neighborhood near an unoccupied house. But did she really want to make it easy for Ella to get her? No, it would be better if she was driving around at 1:35 a.m. She never tried that before. Maybe that was the trick. So as her limb got more jittery and her breath came faster, her lungs got tighter. Delilah drove closer and closer to the city center. She wanted to be where people still meandered her sidewalks. Bright lights turned night into day. At 1:33 a.m., Delilah had an even more inspired idea. She drove onto one of the big bridges. Surely Ella wouldn't go to her there, especially since the decision to hit on the ramp to the bridge was spontaneous as you could get. Even though in the middle of the night at least a dozen cars were on the bridge, Delilah's hands sweated on the repositioning them on the steering wheel. She blinked several times in clear vision, which was becoming blurry. She concentrated on the road and forced herself not to look dashboard digital clock, but she knew when 1:35 a.m. arrived. She knew because that's when she heard her passenger door unlock and unlatch. Gasping and closing control of the car for an instant, Delilah turned the wheel to get back in her lane. The swooshing sound of wind coming through the open passenger door hit her just before she heard the passenger door slam closed again. She glanced to her right, her whole body charged with terror. She fully expected to see Ella sitting in the car next to her, but nothing was there. All she saw was in her car was a big bag of fast food trash and her purse and her flashlight. Almost across the bridge, she put her gaze back on the road, but something hit the roof of her car with a thunk. Delilah screamed and jammed her foot onto the accelerator. Car scooted forward, and she pulled out past the minivan, barely missing its back bumper. She had dragged her car to the right of the lane, and she could take the first exit off the bridge. Driving like a mad woman, Delilah careened onto the industrial road running parallel to the river and pulled over when she reached a boarded-up factory. Her car skidded into a stop, spraying gravel. Delilah had the engine off, and I was about to get out of the car the minute the vehicle stopped moving. She didn't bother to lock it up, and she grabbed her purse flashlight, started the driver's door behind her, and ran. She ran toward the river, behind the factory, her feet crackling over crumbling concrete and trash. She ran until she was hidden from the road. Her car was no longer in sight either. Delilah could still see where she was going because of the factory, though empty, was well lit. She stopped running and looked around. She had no idea where she was, and she didn't feel safe. But she didn't feel safe. Where would she ever feel safe again? Turning in a full circle, she scanned her surroundings. Maybe if she could hide it from Ella now, the doll wouldn't find her later. But where could she hide? Delilah spotted a drainage pipe far side of the factory. It was huge, maybe 4 feet in diameter. She could crawl into that easily. Striding across the dirty gravel lot filled with potholes, Delilah headed toward the drainage pipe. But halfway there, she stopped. She couldn't take her purse with her. She couldn't take anything with her. She didn't know what linked her to Ella. Turning in another circle, Delilah saw a stack of railroad ties. That should work. She checked her surroundings again, and she was alone. She ran over to the railroad ties, hid her purse in the crevice. Then she looked around once and bolted over to the drainage pipe. She crawled inside and hunkered down. She realized she was lightheaded and was hyperventilating. Leaning over her head between her knees, she attempted to shorten her breath, taking in less oxygen that she was sure she needed. She wished that she had a paper bag. There was one in the car. She couldn't go back there. She couldn't go back to any place she ever been before. She couldn't go back to her life. Ella was going to find her anywhere, even here. Delilah fell onto her butt and curled up in a ball, hugging her legs close. She tried to stay silent, but she couldn't. She began to keen. The sound that came from her wasn't like any sound she made before. Not even when her parents died, not even when her first foster home refused to keep her, not when her first foster home dad beat her, not even when Gerald scheduled that she could blow her nose, not even Richard threw her out. The sound contained every hurt, fear, and crushing disappointment she ever had, all rolled in one screeching rejection of pain. The sound she made the night of a woman who had no strength left. She couldn't fight anymore. Delilah closed her mouth, her throat hurt, her lungs hurt, her heart hurt. She couldn't stop quaking. Her whole body was almost convulsing with apprehension. No, not apprehension. Delilah was so far beyond known version of fear that she didn't feel human anymore. She was never going to feel safe again. Delilah sobbed as she got on her hands and knees. She couldn't stay here. Ella would know where she was. Crawling as fast as she could, her hands stinking from the rough concrete surface chafing at her skin, Delilah clambered out of the drainage pipe. She stood. Where could she go? Delilah began to run again. She ran parallel to the river, scanning this way and that, looking for a way out, looking for an escape hatch and ejection seat, something to take her as far from Ella as she could get. She didn't know how long she ran before she stumbled into what looked like an abandoned construction site. Its lumpy outlines were shrouded by darkness, with street lamps sent enough light over it to reveal its basic outline. She slowed her pace, aimed for her flashlight, and studied the weathered sign announcing the project. It looked like an office complex. Shoving at the dirty board covering opening side of what seemed to be a 3-story structure, Delilah sat her into the site. The answer in her plight was in here. She was sure of it. Someplace here she was going to find a way to escape hell forever, but where? Picking her way into the board sprinkled with nails and screws, weaving around stacks of lumber and drywall, Delilah made her way into the room that nearly completed. The drywall wasn't just up, but it was also textured and painted. And here and there, high up on the inside of the wall, was her answer. An vent opening, uncovered, barely big enough for her to slip into. That was the way. That was where she would stop running from Ella. Looking around the room for a way to boost herself up to the opening, she spotted an outturned sawhorse. She trotted over to it, righted it, and carried it to a spot below the vent. It was strong and stable. Stopping to listen, she was sure she was alone. Delilah hoisted herself into the sawhorse, stood on her tiptoes, and was able to tilt her hand over in front of the vent opening. From there, she did a pull-up, thankful for all the upper body strength she got from heavy cleaning in the diner. Once her head was level in a vent opening, she reached with one arm something for a kind of handhold, which she didn't find one, but her sweaty hand stuck to the metal enough to give her some purchase. She was able to wiggle her upper body into the vent opening by going one hand length at a time. Once she was far into the vent, she had to wiggle her whole body like a snake into the vent. But she didn't feel safe. She stopped wiggling for a moment, taking stock. Turning on her flashlight, she started a downward turn in the vent. She inched toward it. Yes, that was it. Aiming her head into the chute-like space, she scooted forward. A little farther and a little farther. Her flashlight slept in her sweaty hand and clinked against the metal vent walls as it dropped out of Delilah's reach. She heard it impact something with a sharp crack. It must have been broken because the space went dark. Delilah's shoulders wedged so tightly in the compact metal enclosure, she finally found it. This is where Ella couldn't find her. No one would find her here. Trying to move just to be sure, she confirmed that she was stuck, completely and thoroughly stuck. Her breathing slowed, she relaxed. She couldn't move in any direction. She could never have to run from Ella again. Wow. That is sad. So basically, she was so mentally screwed, she died. And I'm sorry I'm stopping the ASMR. Just that just took me by surprise. So she was so scared she got herself stuck in a construction site on the 3rd story in a vent. We should probably keep that down just in case in the future it goes, hey, I know we work in an office. Did you know, like, one time they found a dead girl in the vents? So, yeah, we should probably keep that in mind. But, yeah, that's the end of 1:35 a.m. the story. The next story is Room for One More. That is written by... Oh, let's see. Room for One More was written by... Oh, it usually tells you on these things. It doesn't. Whatever. But, yeah. I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And, yeah, next time we're going to read this. Next time we're going to read One Night Stand or whatever it is. It's not One Night Stand. I forgot the name because I'm tired. Anyways, I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.